Listen to the Gospel of Jesus Christ according to St. John, the 20th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together, with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Again Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." And with that he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. And though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas said to him, "My Lord and my God." Then Jesus told him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Please be seated. So do we know the scene this gospel takes place in? It starts on the evening of the first Easter. And for me, the tone, the feeling, the sense of this gospel, as it starts at least, has a familiar ring to it as a pastor. It feels like many situations I sometimes find myself in when I have to go meet a family in a hospital ward or in a waiting room. A family member perhaps has had an accident, or there's been a heart attack or a stroke, or someone elderly has fallen and hurt themselves. Or even, and these are very tough situations, where there has been some kind of domestic dispute or an incident with drugs or alcohol, and someone is severely injured. Maybe even someone is killed. And you walk into that waiting room, and you can feel the emotions in the air. Fear, shock, sadness, frustration. So many questions. Questions like, what really happened? Who's to blame? Why are the doctors taking so long getting back to us? Why did God let this happen? And that tends on to another kind of emotion that can often happen, anger. It can also be in questions like, what is she doing here? He's the reason why she's sick in the first place. She hasn't been to see her dad in 10 years. What is she doing here now? All he wants is her money. As angry as people get with each other, they get even more upset sometimes with themselves. I should have been there for her. I should have seen this coming. I should never have gone to work today. I should have paid more attention. I should have been a better husband, wife, mother, son, daughter, dad, grandson, friend, neighbor, pastor. I wish I could go back. I wish I could start over again. I wish I could take all back, the things that I didn't do right. I wonder if this is how those disciples felt, locked in their own kind of waiting room all by themselves that evening. You know, these feelings seem particularly out of place to us and sad, don't they? Because this is, after all, the evening of Easter. We know Jesus, by this point, is raised from the dead. We know it. He's appeared to several of the female disciples that morning. And they came running only hours before to announce, "We have seen the Lord. Christ is risen."
Christ is indeed. Hallelujah.
We can say it. But maybe these guys in this room could not. None of these male disciples could seem to believe this crazy story they heard. And maybe they're all still filled with kind of the dread and filled with doubt. Yes, it wasn't just doubting Thomas that felt that way at this point in the story. Speaking of which, why was Thomas not there that first night? We have no way of knowing. The Bible doesn't say. But I wonder if staying in that waiting room just got to be too much for him on that Saturday. They probably waited. It was just overwhelming. So that Sunday, he had to get out of there. He had to get some air. Get away from the rest of this hopelessness. Away from family and friends. People he should have been around, but he couldn't stand it any longer. Maybe he also felt so awful himself that he just couldn't come to that waiting room that evening. He just couldn't go in that doorway. He couldn't bear to face the pain and the tears, the memories and the regrets, and then the fights and the judgments. It was all too much. Waiting room moments. We really can't avoid them, can we? How can we face them? How can we ever hope to get through them? Because they will come into our lives. Well, maybe we get a hint. Maybe we get a bit of the secret that we can see and realize as we watch what happens in this story. That none of these disciples are given anything more, really, than Jesus gives to us in situations like this. First of all, he gave them the gift of his Holy Spirit. He literally breathed on them, it says. And that gave them power. He does this exact same thing to each of us, to all of us, in our baptisms. We had 2 baptisms here last night. It was a precious holy ground that we had a baby, a couple months old, and an 18-year-old baptized here at Saturday night service. But all of us have partaken in that power. The Holy Spirit at that moment rests on you and gives you power. And so every time that we remember that baptism, and we can wake up in the morning, and I know my confirmation students hear this plenty, and those who the baptismal instruction have heard it plenty. Yeah, it's a Martin Luther thing. He would wake up and wash his face and imagine those as the baptismal waters and say, "I'm baptized, God, give me a do-over today." Same thing. We are calling on that power of God to be right upon us To be like that oil dribbling down, as we heard in our psalm today, that short little psalm. Coming down like moisturizer to fill those dry parts of who we are. Think about it. What is this power? It's the power of life. The power to live. Power to move. Power to speak. And to sing. And to walk. Walk straight into any situation with our heads held high. The power to wait. The power to find rest. To find your place of quiet and peace, even amid chaos, even amid the messes of life. Yeah. The power to say what you need to say, and the power to hold your tongue. The power just to sit there. The power to stand there at someone's side, even at the bedside, and say nothing at all, but just be there. As long as it takes. It takes power to do that, doesn't it? God gives us that power. Most of all, it is the same power that is explicitly given to the disciples on this first Easter evening in this Gospel of John. And as Pastor said to me, as we were talking about this going home last night, one of the scariest but most profound powers we have. It is, no doubt, the most amazing and awesome power in all the universe. This is the true power of God that God has shared with us, with all His people, through the life-giving love and work of Jesus Christ. It is simply, and it's right there in that text, the power to forgive sins. Yeah. Jesus Himself gave us this power. Not just these guys gathered in the room. All of us who follow Him and call ourselves Christian. He told us so in these exact words, meant to be resonating across all of our lives and in everything we do. I'll read it to you again. If you forgive anyone's sins, their sins are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven. Do you see the immense power that this gives us? When we find ourselves locked in our rooms of anger, hurt, guilt, unable to forgive others, unable to forgive ourselves, the crucified and risen Jesus Christ enters those dark places, all our locked rooms, our waiting rooms, and says, "Peace be with you." It means peace. You can stop the fight. You can stop blaming yourself. Stop blaming others. You can let it go. Breathe in my forgiveness, says the Lord. My love, my life. Let all of your old hurts and grudges just flow away. Seek out those you have pushed away. Unlock the doors to your heart first. And let back in those people. I am here with you, the Lord says. And just as He said to them, He said, touch my wounds. The wounds I bear on your behalf, says Jesus Christ. See that I, your God, whom you have crucified, I do not blame. I do not condemn. So you have to stop blaming and condemning others, especially yourselves. Believe again. Trust again. Love again. Live again. You can do it. I give you the power. I give you the strength. I give you myself. Here it comes. The Spirit. The crucified and risen Christ appears with us this very moment. Just as he did then, just as he promised. Let him in. Breathe it in. May his presence here in our midst power you up for anything that you have to